Ever wonder about those cool cars that hit the road with a bang but end up being a total disaster? Well, buckle up, because we're about to take a thrilling ride through the world of automotive flops. I'm your tour guide, Kevin, and we're cruising down memory lane of 10 cars that promised the stars but delivered, well, let's just say a bumpy ride. Stick with me till the end. Number 2 is my favorite, and I'll leave you in disbelief. So rev up your engines as we explore the not so cool side of automotive history. Number 10, Triumph TR7. In 1974, Triumph did something different and introduced the TR7 sports car with a wedge-shaped design. When you looked at it from above, you'd see a sleek, steep hood and pop-up headlights. Or from the other side, if you only saw the front half, with its gently flared wings, dipping hood, and integrated black bumper, unique for the 1970s. It promised a future look. But here comes the surprising part. The rear half, it was a shocker. With an abruptly cut roof and sharply dropping rear window, and an oddly shaped rear bumper. Legend has it, the designer, Mr. Yugo, said, "My God, you've done the same on the other side as well?" when he first saw it. The TR7 faced criticism not just for its bold styling, but also for practical reasons. The TR7 had lots of issues with quality. It's not just that, but there were loads of complaints about bodies rusting and engines leaking oil. In 1977, during a test, a German magazine called Automotive und Sport mentioned that the press's car's engine had started to boil. To put it simply, TR7 owners were no strangers to seeing oil pressure and low coolant level lights. The TR7 faced many challenges, including factory closures and production moves. By 1981, after numerous attempts to save it, the TR7 project was finally halted. While it may not have been a financial success, the TR7 holds the title of the most produced TR with 112,368 units sold in its turbulent 6-year run. Number 9, Pontiac Aztec. Made from 2001 to 2005, this car earned its spot because it's one of the ugliest rides ever seen on American roads. It even played a part in putting an end to the Pontiac brand. The idea behind the Aztec was good. It aimed to be cool for the young and practical for slightly older folks, serving as a fun and stylish family car, edgier than a minivan. However, the reality fell flat. That crossover turned out to be clunky and unpopular. It wasn't just the weird backside and the abundance of gray plastic that turned people away. At a time when crossovers, SUVs were gaining popularity, the Aztec's short hood, boxy shape, and small wheels made it seem more like a minivan. The Aztec's downfall marked the beginning of the end of Pontiac, closing shops 5 years after the automotive misadventure. Number 8, Austin Algro. The Austin Algro came from the same troubled times as the Morris Marina, both products of the struggling British Leyland in the 70s. The Algro had a short development period after Leyland Motors and British Motors Holdings merged in 1968. Despite its quick entry into the market, the Algro faced challenges. Its rivals were selling well as versatile hatchbacks, but the Algro lacked practicality. Its peculiar design included the quirky steering wheel, which was later removed due to its unpopularity. It didn't win over many fans. Even police cars ordered with the Quartic wheel had it swapped out, claiming it didn't suit police driving style. Despite attempts to address its issue, the Algro faced criticism from its lack of space, underpowered engines, and higher pricing compared to rivals. It gained a notorious reputation for potential problems, like wheel bearing issues and structural quirks, earning the nickname All Agro. Sales reflected the struggle, with about 650,000 Algros sold in its 9-year run, a far cry from the 2.1 million Austin 1100 model sold by its predecessor. The Austin Maestro finally replaced the Algro in 1983, bringing an end to its challenging era. Number 7, Chrysler PT Cruiser Convertible. The PT Cruiser didn't do as well as Chrysler wanted. People even called it the PT Loser. One big reason was it looked too big and boxy. Just not cool. PT stands for Personal Transport, which is kind of a plain name. But what folks hated more than the original PT Cruiser was a convertible version. In 2005, Chrysler tried to make it more attractive before stopping production in 2010. However, critics and the public still didn't like it. It looks like they just chopped off the roof of a regular PT Cruiser. In this case, the design flaw was a big problem for the car. Not surprisingly, the PT Cruiser convertible was only sold for 2 years and in modest numbers. Number 6. Seoyon Rodius. Made by the Korean company Seoyon from 2005 to 2013, the Rodius is on the list because of its weird look and slow engine. The design, created by Brit Ken Greenlee, who also worked on some of Seoyon's off-roaders, was supposed to be inspired by luxury yachts. If you squint, you might see the similarities. But from the front to the back doors, the Rodius looked pretty average, similar to the Chrysler Grand Voyager. The real trouble was at the back, where the door frame dropped like a coupe, but the roof stayed straight. It gave the Rodius a bizarre look, like someone awkwardly extended its tail, turning off many potential buyers. Things didn't improve when you hit the road. The odious Rodius, as it was mockingly called, had an old 2.7-liter Mercedes diesel engine. It was so heavy that performance and fuel efficiency were bad, and the ride was bouncy and taking corners wasn't in its forte. If you bought a Rodius, you probably lost a lot of money because it lost more than 75% of its value in 3 years. Wow, look at that, we're halfway through. If you're enjoying this video, please subscribe and like the video. Now, let's get back to the road. Number 5. Yugo. The Yugo, oh boy. That car was a real lemon. It came from Yugoslavia back in 1980s, meant for folks on a budget in the US. But let me tell you, it was a disaster on wheels. They called it the mother of all lemons. The thing was so cheap that the marketing brochure listed carpet as a standard feature. Can you believe that? And it wasn't just about being cheap. This car loved to break down. They even put a warmer on the back window so you could keep your hands warm while pushing it. I'm not kidding. The engines liked to explode, the electrical system was always acting up, and parts would just fall off randomly. Insurance companies wanted nothing to do with it. No surprise, the Yugo didn't last long in the US. It was a real mess. Number 4. Rover, City Rover. The Algro and the Marina showed what Brit cars were like in the 70s, but in the 90s, the City Rover kind of became a symbol of MG's Rover going down. It could have helped the company, but it was too little too late. They had to make the City Rover because MG Rover didn't have enough money to create a brand new car. They needed a small car under the Rover 25, like a successor to the old Austin Rover Metro. Since they didn't find good options in Europe, they looked to India. The Tata Indica seemed to fit the bill. So they made a deal, and in 2003, Tata started making City Rover in Pune. Despite the Rover's brand being kind of prestigious, people didn't like the City Rover because it wasn't well made. Reviews were also not good, bad quality, not great performance, and the handling was vague. MG Rover was so worried about the bad press that it wouldn't give a car to the Top Gear TV show. Instead, James May, who wasn't famous then, went undercover to review one during a customer test drive. MG Rover went bankrupt in 2005. When the Chinese company SAIC bought MG back in the UK, they didn't revive the City Rover. Number 3. Hummer H2. The Hummer H2 rolled onto the scene in 2002, courtesy of General Motors. But guess what? Many folks around the globe shrugged and said, no thanks. This downside version of the regular Hummer is still a colossal hunk of metal, tipping the scale at a whopping 6,600 pounds. They kept making the H2 until 2009, and despite its not so pretty design, there were some cool things about it. Inside you got leather as standard, room for 5 people, and if you wanted to pack in even more, there was an option for a third row, making it a 7-seater. The 2009 model packed a punch with a 6.2-liter V8 boasting 393 horsepower, giving this giant enough muscle to get moving. It could tackle off-road adventures and haul up to 8,200 pounds, which is no small feat. Now let's talk about the H2's biggest flaw, its fuel efficiency. Because it's considered a heavy-duty vehicle, the EPA didn't bother testing its fuel economy. One critic kept tabs and recorded about 10 miles per gallon, which is just downright terrible. Number 2. DeLorean DMC-12. The DeLorean DMC-12 sports car is linked to the Back to the Future movies. We all flash back to it as the time machine that Marty McFly, Michael J. Fox, used to travel through time. Here's a commodity, folks, frequently forgotten. In the movie, the DeLorean was kind of a joke. Just having on the big screen was meant to be funny because of its not so great history. The DMC-12 was the only car ever made by DeLorean Motor Companies. They started in 1975, but went out of business by 1982. The company was a concoction of the quirky auto superintendent John DeLorean. Their hand auto, the DMC-12, was a total bomb. It had a candescent pristine sword outside and cool chump sec doors, but a seriously weak machine. Plus, it had a really weak engine that took more than 10 seconds to go from 0 to 60 miles. Our critics didn't hold back, and with the $25,000 price tag in 1977, the public thought it was way too pricey. It was not until 1985's Back to the Future and its conclusions that folks started looking at the DeLorean with a bit more love. Number 1. Amphicar. The Amphicar was based on the German Volkswagen Schwimmwagen, a car that could swim, used during World War II to move troops across the water. The catch was the vehicle was built for war and didn't have to follow the safety and environmental rules like civilian vehicles did. So the Amphicar ended up not being a great car or a great boat. Why did it flop? First, the steering was wonky. A boat needs a rudder, but a car doesn't. This ride used its front wheels to steer both on land and in water. Sometimes it didn't want to go where you told it to. Second, the power wasn't enough. The engine from a Triumph Herald might work for a small car, but the Amphicar was heavy. On land, it could barely hit 70 miles per hour, and when it swam, you had to grease up 13 joints, even taking out the back seat for one of them. Plus, the salty water didn't play nice with the mild steel it was made of. What did it in? It was trying to follow both car and boat rules. They just couldn't get along. The 10 cool cars that took a wrong turn on the road to success. Which one surprised you the most? Now, if these cars are failures, wait to see what the government can do to your cars. Check out our video, 10 hard devices the government can track you with. I'll see you over there. Drive safe and keep those engines roaring.